The planet Velra was dying. Its once bright sky was filled with red fire and black smoke. The ground shook as explosions rolled across the plains, turning cities into dust. For years, the Oran people had fought to survive, hiding in caves, praying to gods that no longer answered. Every whisper in their temples carried the same words: "If any light still hears us, send your angels." Era stood at the edge of a ruined tower, looking at the burning horizon. Her pale silver skin was streaked with dirt and ash, her eyes heavy with sleepless nights. She was the leader now, though she had never wanted to be. The old council was gone, burned when the first Ravager bombs fell. Her people were starving, their armies broken, and the only thing left to give them was hope. The Ravagers had come like a storm, metal beasts from the void who conquered for pleasure. They tore through Velra's defenses and burned the great forest that once fed the Oran cities. Now only shadows remained. Their ships hung above the clouds, glowing red like the eyes of demons. Era's voice cracked as she whispered her final prayer, her words shaking through the cracked walls of the temple ruins. "Please," she said softly. "If the old stories were true, if the angels ever walked the stars, hear us now." Silence followed. The air smelled of smoke and salt. Around her, the last survivors, old priests, mothers clutching children, broken soldiers, bowed their heads and joined her. Their songs were faint, trembling, fading under the sound of distant thunder. But the thunder did not fade. It grew louder. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Dust fell from the temple ceiling. Someone screamed. The priests lifted their heads. The sound came not from the storm, but from the sky. A deep, low hum began to rise like a mountain waking. It was not the Ravagers. Their engines screamed high and sharp. This sound was different, deeper, colder, and impossibly vast. Era stumbled outside, her eyes searching the clouds. The wind howled across the ruins. Then the light appeared. At first it was only a shimmer behind the smoke, blue and white, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Then the clouds tore apart and something massive broke through. The people fell silent, staring upward. It was not a god. It was not an angel. It was a ship. Metal the color of night, long and sharp like a blade. Its hull was scarred by age and war, covered in strange human symbols. The craft moved without sound, descending slowly until its shadow stretched for miles. Around it, lightning danced across the clouds, crackling like the breath of a giant. The Ravager fleet above the planet froze. Sensors screamed across their command decks. They had seen many ships in their time, pirate, empire, machine, but nothing like this. The newcomer carried no markings of the known worlds. It bore only one word across its armored skin. Vanguard. Era felt her breath stop. The name meant nothing to her, but something deep inside her soul trembled. Every legend she had heard as a child spoke of the firstborn, the lost species who had once shaped the stars before vanishing into silence. Some said they became gods, others said they were destroyed by their own power. Now one had returned. The Ravagers opened fire. Dozens of red beams lanced through the sky, tearing across the atmosphere toward the strange ship. But the bolts vanished before they hit, swallowed by an invisible barrier. The air shimmered with a faint blue glow. Then with one silent flash, the human ship answered. No sound came at first, just light. Beams of pure energy shot downward, slicing through the clouds and burning through the Ravager ships in a single sweep. One by one, the enemy vessels erupted, their fire fading into drifting ash. The Oran watched in silence, too stunned to cheer. It happened so fast it felt like time itself had stopped. Era fell to her knees, staring at the sky that had once been her people's graveyard. The clouds had split open. The stars shone again, then a voice spoke. It was calm, human, and clear. It echoed through the air, through every broken city, every silent valley. "This is the United Nations ship Vanguard. Stand by." The words rolled across the planet like thunder. The survivors looked at one another in disbelief. The priest whispered that the angels had come at last. Children wept and laughed at the same time. Soldiers threw down their broken weapons, unable to speak. But Era did not smile. She stared up at the ship, her hands trembling. There was something in that voice, something that was not divine. It was not the voice of mercy or salvation. It was the voice of command, of discipline, of war. The sky turned white again. In seconds, the human vessel unleashed its full fury. The last of the Ravager fleet disintegrated into fire. Their wreckage rained down into the sea like falling stars. The night was silent once more. When it was over, the Vanguard did not move closer. It hovered above Velra, dark and quiet, like a shadow watching from heaven. No words came. No light descended. Era stood in the temple doorway, her face lit by the glow of burning wrecks. "We prayed for angels," she whispered. "But what are you?" The ship gave no answer. The people around her began to cheer, but Era could not. She knew what she saw in the sky was no miracle. It was something older, stronger, and far more dangerous. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. For 2 nights and 2 days, the great ship hung above Velra without moving. Its engines burned softly, a pale blue light flickering through the smoke-filled sky. The Oran people waited, afraid to speak too loud, afraid that if they did, the metal angel would vanish like a dream. Era barely slept. She stood on the temple's highest tower, watching the silent giant in the clouds. Below her, the survivors worked to bury their dead and rebuild broken shelters. Every few hours, the ship's shadow passed over them, cold and heavy. The people whispered stories to each other, saying the angels of the old times had returned, but Era did not believe in angels anymore. Not after what she saw. The ship did not move like a miracle. It moved like a weapon. Then, on the morning of the 3rd day, a voice echoed through the valley again. "This is Captain Rhett Calder of the United Nations ship Vanguard. We come in response to a distress call. Identify yourself." The survivors froze. The sound of the voice was strange, steady, human, yet unfamiliar. It carried strength, control, and something older, something worn by time and loss. Era stepped forward, holding the temple's old radio unit. Her voice trembled as she replied, "This is Era of Velra, leader of the remaining Oran. We thank you for saving us." There was silence. Then the voice spoke again, colder this time. "Saving you was not our mission." The message ended. The people looked to Era for answers, but she had none. They thought the humans had come to protect them, but the captain's words were sharp, almost warning. That night, while the survivors slept, Era found an old archive hidden beneath the temple ruins. The Oran priests once guarded knowledge that was now forbidden, records from the ancient age before their species joined the Galactic Union. Inside the cracked tablets and holographic shards, she found something strange, stories of humans. The legends spoke of them as the firstborn of fire, a race that had built great empires, then vanished after the Great Collapse. It was said that they were too powerful, too proud, and too violent for peace. The gods had banished them beyond the edge of known space. Others claimed they destroyed themselves in war so terrible it burned the stars. But some lines were different. Prophecies, maybe warnings. One phrase kept repeating across the records: "When the stars burn cold and the proud call for angels, humanity will rise again." Era stared at those words for hours. Her hands shook as she closed the archive. For the first time, she began to understand what had answered her prayers. At sunrise, the humans descended. A small vessel broke off from the massive ship, gliding through the air with perfect silence. It landed near the ruins. Dust and smoke swirled as a ramp lowered. 3 figures walked out. They wore gray armor with glowing lines across the chest. Their helmets were black, hiding their faces. But their movements were smooth, precise, and heavy with confidence. Weapons hung at their sides, sleek, clean, deadly. Era and a few of her guards stepped forward. The humans stopped a few meters away. One removed his helmet. He had short, dark hair, cold gray eyes, and the kind of expression that carried no fear. "I am Captain Rhett Calder," he said. "We detected your signal and neutralized your attackers." "Neutralized," Era repeated softly. "You mean destroyed?" The captain did not respond. He looked around at the ruins. "This planet shows signs of extreme bombardment. Your people are at less than 15% survival. You require immediate evacuation." Era shook her head. "We cannot leave. Velra is our home." Rhett looked at her for a long time. "Home is only a word. Survival is purpose." His soldiers began scanning the ruins with glowing devices. Their faces remained hidden. Era could feel the distance between their worlds. The Oran had emotion, grief, hope. The humans had silence. She finally asked, "Where did you come from?" The captain's eyes flickered toward the horizon, from beyond the silence. He said no more. Hours passed as the humans set up machines around the ruins. Silver towers unfolded, creating a shimmering dome of energy to shield the survivors. The Oran watched in awe. Food and clean water appeared from strange devices. Wounded were treated by drones that moved like birds of light. Yet there was no warmth in their work. The humans helped because it was efficient, not because they cared. One Oran child tugged at a soldier's hand, offering a flower from the ashes. The soldier froze, staring at it for a long moment. Then he looked away, walking off without a word. The flower fell to the ground. That night, Ara stood before the human camp. "Captain," she asked, "why did you come if not to save us?" He turned toward the horizon where the stars glowed faintly. "We received a transmission from this sector. Coordinates matched ancient archives. We came to confirm the signal's source." "What signal?" Rhett looked at her, his voice low. "Humanity's beacon." Ara frowned. "You mean this world?" "Yes," he said. "Long ago, before the Great Silence, we placed signal anchors across frontier worlds. It seems one survived. That means this planet was once part of our domain." Ara's heart went cold. "Then, this was not a rescue?" The captain's eyes were steady. "No, it was reclamation." Lightning flashed in the distance. The humans turned to leave, their armor glowing faintly in the dark. Ira watched them disappear into the camp, her thoughts spinning. The old legends had not lied. Humanity had vanished, but not because they were weak. They had gone into exile, waiting for the galaxy to forget their name. Now, after centuries of silence, they had returned. Not as saviors, as something far more dangerous. When Ara looked up that night, the human ship still hung above her world, cold, powerful, and patient. She wondered if they were the angels her people prayed for, or the storm that would follow. The calm before dawn was thin and fragile, like the pause before a scream. The Oran survivors had begun to breathe easier under the protection dome the humans built, believing the worst was over. But the universe rarely granted peace for long. High above Velra's clouds, the darkness shifted. The Ravagers had returned. What remained of their scattered fleet had summoned reinforcements. Now a new armada approached, larger than before, stretching across the sky like a metal plague. Their leader, Lord Kreer, watched from the bridge of his flagship. His crimson eyes burned with rage. "They think one ghost ship can stop me," he growled. "Then we shall erase their legend for good." On the ground, Ara saw the horizon flicker red again. She knew what that meant. She ran through the camp to find Captain Rhett. The human soldiers were already in motion, their movements calm, precise, and perfectly timed, as if they had expected this. "The Ravagers," she said, breathless. "They are back." Rhett looked toward the rising light. "We know." He tapped his earpiece. "Vanguard, initiate Protocol Erebus." The words meant nothing to her, but the reaction was immediate. The air vibrated as the giant warship above them came alive. Its engines flared, turning the clouds molten gold. Dozens of panels opened along its hull, revealing weapons that glowed like the eyes of gods. "Get your people underground," Rhett said quietly. "Do not come out until I say so." Ara wanted to argue, but his tone left no room. She turned and shouted orders, leading her people toward the tunnels. As they moved, a low hum filled the air, the same sound that had haunted her dreams since the ship's arrival. Above, the Ravager fleet entered the upper atmosphere, weapons primed, hungry for vengeance. Hundreds of ships locked their sights on the single human vessel. Kreer sneered. "Fire all batteries." The sky erupted. Bolts of plasma and molten slugs rained down like the anger of a dying sun. The human ship disappeared behind a storm of fire. Velra's surface trembled as shockwaves rolled across the ground. The Oran in the tunnels screamed and covered their ears. Then, in the middle of the chaos, the Vanguard's voice echoed through the air. Counterstrike authorized. The clouds split open. Beams of light streaked out in perfect formation. Cold, white, and terrifyingly beautiful. They sliced through the Ravager ships with surgical precision. In seconds, 20 enemy cruisers vanished, torn apart without sound. Their wreckage burned as it fell through the atmosphere, painting streaks of fire across the dawn. Ira clutched the tunnel wall, staring upward through the cracks. It did not look like a battle. It looked like a cleansing. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Rhett stood surrounded by holographic maps. His voice was calm, almost detached. Target Vector 379. Prioritize capital vessels. Launch swarm sequence. 1,000 metallic drones detached from the ship's belly, tiny silver specks darting through the chaos. They moved faster than any Ravager weapon could. Slipping between defenses and striking engines, weapon cores, and reactors with perfect accuracy. One by one, enemy ships fell silent. Creer's rage turned to panic. How are they doing this? Their technology should be ancient. An officer stammered, "It is not ancient, my lord. It is beyond us." Before Creer could reply, his flagship shuddered violently. The lights dimmed. A single transmission appeared on his main screen, a human symbol and a voice calm and emotionless. "This is Captain Rhett Calder of the United Nations ship Vanguard. You invaded a protected system. You will be purged." Creer roared and slammed his fist down. "You dare threaten me? I am the scourge of 100 worlds." "Then this will make 101, Rhett replied. A moment later, the Ravager flagship exploded into 1,000 fragments. The shockwave rolled across the sky. The remaining enemy ships broke formation, some fleeing, others firing wildly into the void. But it was useless. The human vessel did not chase them. It simply erased them one by one until nothing remained. On the ground, the Orin emerged from their tunnels. They watched the battle through the haze. Every flash above was a star dying, every blast a god's heartbeat. The people began to chant the same words over and over. "The angels are here. The angels are here." But Era could not join them. She saw the precision, the cold control. No passion, no rage, just calculation. It was not salvation she saw, it was execution. Hours later, when the last Ravager ship fell, the sky cleared. The Vanguard's engines dimmed and the world went still. Smoke drifted where the enemy had been, fading into the light of Velra's twin suns. Era walked to the highest hill and found Rhett standing there, helmet in hand, watching the horizon. His face was calm, but his eyes looked older than the stars themselves. "You saved us," she said softly. He shook his head. "No, we removed a threat." Era frowned. "Do you always fight like this?" Rhett looked at her, his voice almost a whisper. "This is mercy." He turned away, leaving her standing in the warm wind, trying to understand what kind of beings these humans were. Creatures of logic and flame, protectors and destroyers. That night, as the Orin rebuilt their homes under the faint hum of the human ship, rumors began to spread across the galaxy. The destruction of the Ravager fleet was impossible to hide. Every empire, every colony, every warlord who heard the story felt the same chill. The firstborn had returned. Humanity, the lost race, was alive. Some celebrated, some prayed, but most trembled. Because the galaxy remembered what humans had once done when they were at war, and they knew this was only the beginning. In the days after the battle, Velra was silent except for the soft hum of rebuilding. The Orin people began to rise from the ashes. For the first time in years, children played without fear. Water returned to the rivers, carried by the strange silver machines the humans left behind. The Vanguard remained in orbit, silent and watchful. At night, its reflection shone in the oceans like a second moon. The Orin called it the Heaven Eye. They sang prayers to it, left offerings beneath the temple ruins, and whispered that the angels had saved them. But Era could not pray. Every time she looked at that ship, she remembered the coldness in Captain Rhett's voice. There had been no joy when he fought, no sorrow for the lives lost, only duty. And duty, she knew, could be more terrifying than hate. On the 7th day, the humans came again. 3 shuttles descended from the Vanguard, cutting through the morning mist like blades of light. Era stood at the landing site, surrounded by her council. Red emerged first, his expression calm as always. Behind him walked a dozen soldiers and a figure in white armor with a faint blue glow around her chest plate. "This is Dr. Lin," Rhett said. "She is our reconstruction specialist." The woman nodded politely, scanning the ruins with a small device. "Your world can recover," she said softly. "But it must change." Ira frowned. "Change how?" Dr. Lin looked up. We will rebuild your infrastructure. Energy, water, agriculture. In 3 months, Velra will thrive again. But you must follow our systems. No weapons manufacturing, no fleet building, no trade with hostile sectors. Era felt a sharp unease. You speak like a governor, not a guest. Rhett's gray eyes met hers. We are neither. We are the architects of stability. The humans began their work. Massive machines landed across the plains, unfolding into tall spires of metal. Within days, the scorched cities were covered with glowing grids, humming with clean power. Drones flew in swarms, planting fields and rebuilding roads. To the Orin, it was a miracle. To Era, it was control. She noticed something else too. The humans never rested. They did not laugh, did not sing, did not celebrate. They spoke only when necessary. At night, they stood beneath the stars like statues, staring upward, their eyes filled with something distant, longing perhaps, or regret. One evening, Era found Red alone near the shore. The sea reflected the Vanguard above them. Your people are strange, she said quietly. You fight like gods, build like creators, yet you look as if nothing matters. He did not look at her. Everything matters. That is why we do not allow ourselves to feel. Then why save us? She asked. Why return after all this time? Rhett turned toward her slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with a kind of quiet pain. Because the galaxy forgot what fear means. And peace built on arrogance always collapses. He paused, then added, We learned that lesson once. We do not intend to learn it again. Era shivered. You mean your fall? He nodded. Once we ruled more worlds than you can imagine. We brought progress, technology, order. Then we destroyed it all, ourselves included. It took 1,000 years to crawl back from the ashes. Now we do not seek empire. We seek balance, she stared at him. Balance through fire? Sometimes fire is mercy, he said quietly. The next day, the humans discovered something buried deep under Velra's surface. An ancient Ravager outpost filled with data cores and genetic labs. When Era saw it, her heart turned cold. The Ravagers had been planning to use her world as a testing ground for biological weapons. Rhett ordered the entire complex destroyed. This infection must never spread, he said. Even knowledge can become a weapon. The humans detonated the site from orbit. The explosion lit the horizon for miles. The Orin watched in silence, unsure if they were being protected or purified. Later that night, a small group of Orin soldiers approached Ira. They begged her to ask the humans to stay forever, to guard them, guide them, protect them. With them, one said, we can never be conquered again. But Era shook her head. And what if they decide we are the threat next time? She climbed to the temple roof that evening and sent a private transmission to the Vanguard. Red appeared on the screen, his face lit by the glow of the ship's monitors. Captain, she said, my people are grateful, but they are also afraid. You give us everything, yet I cannot tell if it is a gift or a chain. He studied her for a long moment. Both, he said finally. We give you the tools to stand, but not the power to destroy. If that feels like chains, then perhaps freedom was what killed you in the first place. His words hit her like a blade. Then are we your children now? She asked. Rhett's voice softened just slightly. No, children we would have loved. You we will protect. Before she could reply, an alarm echoed through his side of the transmission. Rhett turned sharply. Behind him, red lights flashed and officers shouted. Captain, one said. Multiple warp signatures detected. Unknown fleets approaching from 3 sectors. Rhett's jaw tightened. So it begins, he muttered. Who are they? Era asked. He looked at her, calm again. The ones who still remember us and wish we had stayed dead. The screen went dark. Moments later, the Vanguard's engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath Velra. The massive ship rose higher into the sky, its blue glow spreading like a storm. Era felt the wind whip through her hair as she watched it ascend. For a brief second, she felt the same mix of awe and fear that she had when she first saw it descend. The humans had given her people light, food, safety, but she now understood what came with it. Wherever humanity went, the stars trembled, and soon the rest of the galaxy would too. The morning after the Vanguard left orbit, Velra woke beneath a silent sky. The humans were gone. Only the silver towers they built still stood, humming faintly like echoes of a dream. The fields they restored still glowed with artificial sunlight, and the air still smelled clean. Yet something deep within the Oran people had changed. Era stood on the steps of the rebuilt temple watching the horizon. It felt strange to see her world at peace. Children laughed again, markets reopened, and songs returned to the wind. But there was always that uneasy silence between the notes, an awareness that peace had come not through faith but through fear. Late that afternoon, the clouds shimmered faintly. A distant roar rolled across the sky. The Oran people lifted their heads. Above them, faint as starlight, the Vanguard reappeared, its hull scarred, its armor smoking. It hovered low, engines flickering. "They are back!" someone shouted, but Era's heart sank. Ships that returned like that were never victors. Moments later, she received a transmission. The image of Captain Rhett flickered before her, his face pale under the red glow of battle alarms. "We have engaged hostile forces beyond your system," he said. "They were waiting for us." "Who?" Era whispered. "Everyone," he said simply. "The empires, the syndicates, the warlords." The galaxy remembered. Behind him, the crew moved with desperate precision. Sparks fell from the ceiling. The sound of metal tearing filled the background. "Your ship, it is damaged," she said. Rhett shook his head. "It will hold, but Velra cannot be caught in this crossfire. You must power down all signal beacons. Hide. Do not draw attention." Ira wanted to speak, to argue, to beg him to stay, but the line cut out. She ran outside. In the sky, hundreds of new signatures appeared. Fleets from a dozen worlds converging, forming a ring of fire around the human vessel. The largest one, a golden armada bearing the crest of the sovereign dominion, opened communications to every channel in the sector. "This is High Chancellor Varys of the Dominion," a grand voice declared. "Surrender the human ship. Their age is over." The people of Velra fell to their knees. They could see the impossible, a single ship surrounded by hundreds. Then came Rhett's reply, his voice calm and clear through the static. "The age of humanity never ended. You only stopped hearing it." And with that, the Vanguard lit the sky. Every weapon it possessed came alive. The clouds split open with light so bright it turned night into day. Explosions rolled like thunder across the heavens. Enemy ships shattered, their metal falling like burning rain. But for every fleet destroyed, more arrived. Endless waves from every corner of the galaxy drawn by fear and vengeance. The sky became a storm. Era watched with tears streaming down her face. Her people hid underground as fire rained from above. The temple walls shook. The oceans boiled from the heat of the bombardment. She whispered to herself, "You prayed for angels, and this is what answered." Hours passed. The battle never seemed to end. Yet through the chaos, one thing was clear. The humans did not run. The Vanguard fought until its armor cracked and its engines burned. It fought like a creature that refused to die, carrying the fury of an entire lost world. When the last wave came, Rhett gave his final command. "Activate Solstice Protocol." Deep within the ship, a core brighter than any sun ignited. A sphere of white energy expanded outward, swallowing the enemy fleets in silence. The stars themselves dimmed for a moment. When the light faded, the Vanguard was gone. Velra's sky was empty once again. The battle was over. Days later, fragments of the human ship began to fall, silent pieces of metal glowing like dying embers. The Oran gathered them carefully, treating each one as sacred. The wreckage carried no bodies, no signs of crew, only blackened symbols and data cores, still pulsing faintly. Era stood on the shore where she had once spoken to Rhett. The ocean was calm again, the air cool. She held a fragment of his ship in her hands. The metal hummed softly, projecting a final message in his voice. "This is Captain Rhett Calder of the United Nations ship Vanguard. Mission complete. The galaxy must remember, salvation is never gentle. If they pray for angels again, tell them angels do not come. Humanity does." The recording ended. The light inside the metal flickered out. Era looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, she felt sure that humanity still lived. Scattered, hiding, waiting. The Oran rebuilt their world, but every year they lit a beacon into the sky in memory of the ship that had saved them. Over time, the legend spread. Across distant worlds, the story changed with each telling. Some said angels of steel had fallen from the heavens to defend the weak. Others whispered that demons of fire had punished the proud. But those who truly remembered spoke one truth. The Orin had prayed for mercy, and humanity had answered. Their return was not a blessing. It was a warning, one written in light and ash across the stars. Because whenever the galaxy forgot fear, whenever tyrants rose again and prayed for divine justice, the same shadow would appear. A voice, calm and human, would echo from the void. This is the Vanguard. Stand by, and the stars would burn once more.